It's a story, and this is a case with a lot of Roald Dahl stories. It's a story about outsiders. So it's a story about the BFG and Sophie who find each other. They're two outsiders. They're remote from their worlds, and they find a way to come together and really kind of defeat bad aspects of our world. And I think that, given what we're living through at the moment, I think that's actually quite pertinent. I play Child Chewer, and I'm one of the 9 nasty giants, so collectively we're kind of the antagonists of the piece, if you like. And then we had 3 weeks rehearsal before we actually started shooting to kind of work on the physicality and all that kind of stuff, with a wonderful guy called Terry Notary, who kind of led us into the whole physical world of performance capture and stuff like that. So yeah, that's who I am.
The evil giants torment the BFG. What was it like working with a wonderful talent in Mark Rylance?
It was brilliant. He is a lovely, lovely man, and he couldn't have been more generous and more collaborative, and it was a real thrill to work with him.
A thrill I would also imagine to work with Steven Spielberg. What makes him unique, do you think, as a force behind the camera?
I think what was extraordinary was that, iconic figure, and he's been at the center of this world for over 40 years, but he was still the most energetic, the most fun guy on set, and he absolutely wanted to make the best film and tell the best story that he possibly could. So to see that energy that was still so apparent today was such an inspiration. I don't know that there was a particular moment, but the overall, to spend 2 or 3 months in that kind of environment with that level of talent is something that I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
Final question, do you have a message to fans about why they must go and see this film before you leave?
Well, you must go and see it because it's one of the iconic British stories of the last 30 years. So I think to miss out would be a huge mistake.
Well, you dress up in a pink, not pink, but grey pajamas, and you put dots on him, and you put dot in his eyes, and then you give him a helmet with a camera that goes like this, and that's sort of how we do it. Motion capture, it's called. It's sort of like the process of Gollum in the Lord of the Rings films.
What was your experience like working with one of the great geniuses of cinema in Steven Spielberg?
Pretty good. It was really awesome. It was pretty unbelievable.
What makes him, do you think, so unique, so special as a director?
I think just Steven has a love for film, has a love for stories, and I think it just shines through his films. And he's really extraordinary in working with young actors like Ruby, who plays the lead in the film. Her performance is beautiful, and of course Mark's too. But so he has a touch that is just so wonderful. Well, I think the story is about friendship, about being brave, about loneliness, and I don't know. I mean, Mark and Ruby they just get a connection that just really makes you feel so good when you watch the film. It's just really lovely.
I think that this book was written, 38 years ago. The world has changed a lot. Many things have become more sophisticated, and some things don't stand up. This is not one of those things. And I think the reason for that is that we've always had pretty similar standards surrounding children. Children are always expected to be good, to be polite, to be well behaved, and to be good at school. Roald Dahl made it okay to be naughty, and risky, and rude, and playful. And so the things that bewitched children then are still the case now. If you're in the school library and you've got Enid Blyton, which of course there is a time and a place for and is really wonderful, or Swallows and Amazons, of which I'm in the Swallows and Amazons movie, and I'll probably be speaking to you there, it's a different thing. It's a world of nostalgia and beauty and something else and something other. But the BFG is about being naughty and rude and misbehaving a little bit, which I think is always going to appeal to kids.
You've worked with quite a few of the greats. What's unique about Steven, though, behind the camera?
Well, Steven loves actors, I think. He really likes actors, and he's always looking for a joke or a gag or something of making a moment better, and it's extraordinary to see him on set. how he's got the whole thing edited in his head, and he just knows how to shoot something. I know that sounds light or not important, but that's incredibly important. He knows how to film a gag, or he knows how to film a huge action sequence or a fantastical sequence. He just knows how to do it. It's in his bones, it's in his makeup, and he's the best, greatest director in the world. I think it's difficult to argue with that, you know? Every single person, as far as I can see here, has seen a Steven Spielberg movie. I don't think you can say that about anybody else.
I think it is about two outsiders who meet each other, a giant and a little girl in an orphanage, both feeling rather rejected by and bullied, and they give each other confidence to turn around and face those bullies. And I think that's the sort of thing a lot of small people often feel, that they are outside what the group are doing and feel they're alone. And I think that Roald Dahl understood that. And then he gives them this wonderful journey that they have together.
Of course, you're a very regal part of that journey. Can you talk about how you got into character for such a prestigious role?
Well, I saw a lot of footage of the Queen, and I tried to find bits of her in domestic situations, because in the film she's in a very domestic situation. And I tried to make her as real without making her sort of stiff. And then if you make a real queen in a fantastical movie and give her very odd things to say, then you have humour. He's the most relaxed person to work with. He likes actors. He wants you to do your best, so he is very pleased with, he chooses you and he expects you to get on with what you do while he does what he does. If it's wrong, he tells you. He works very quickly. He loves working with young people. He makes the whole thing fun, and he's just a joy to be with.
I think the timeless magic of Roald Dahl is that he doesn't condescend to children, and he creates worlds which are utterly fantastical and so impossible and so preposterous that they become funny, but they're not silly. You know, they're often rooted in something dark and something real and something frightening. And the combination of those two things, I think, is irresistible to children and not patronizing to children, and makes them feel that they get the jokes as much as the grown-ups.
So at the heart of this story is the relationship between the BFG and Sophie. Can you talk a little bit about Ruby and Mark and the extraordinary chemistry they seem to have?
Well, when I showed up to shoot the Buckingham Palace stuff, they'd already been shooting for 3 months, by which time they'd become very, very good friends, and it was very moving to see, actually. They'd have a genuine friendship, and I think that comes across on the screen. I do have one very good Steven Spielberg specific moment that I loved, which was during the scene at the end in Buckingham Palace when there are huge stacks of toast. He picked one up on a set that was the size of a football pitch, and he flung it like a frisbee because he wanted to see if it was real. And I happened to be standing at the other end of the football pitch, and my hand was out, and it landed perfectly in my hand, which got a round of applause in the cast. So I felt like I'd just been past like the home run by Steven Spielberg. It was good fun. Very unusual, eccentric, funny story that is very difficult to explain because you can't quite. It's very extreme imagination, and it's very fantastical, and it's full of spectacle, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
The magic of Roald Dahl's story, I think he really understands children's imagination, and I think he also understands that we come to language through the sound of language. We don't understand what words mean at first. We learn to say them because of the sound of them. And so his language, he's created that. My relationship with Steven, we're just good friends, and we like stories a lot.
It was amazing to work with Mark Rylance and Steven because they're both such lovely people and they're both so talented, so it was such an honour to work with them. And I think the connection between Sophie and BFG is a really meaningful connection because it shows that two people who are very different can be friends, and it almost kind of shows the relationship between an older person and a younger person can be just as strong as two older people or two younger people. I would describe it as a fantastical, meaningful story that Roald Dahl wrote and the wonderful Melissa Matheson adapted, and it's so amazing and it has such a deep meaning, and so it was so much fun.